something you shared with me was how you grew up in an entrepreneurial family and
Mm.
that your parents had restaurants
Hmm.
and you've seen it go horribly wrong and you've also
Yes.
seen it go right.
Yes.
When you reflect back on those formative years as a young, let's say, entrepreneur in the making, was there a key lesson or moment from that period in time that has informed the way that you look at your life and your business now?
Do you know what's so funny about that is I look back with so much fondness. You know, I grew up in the restaurant trade. My parents owned two restaurants, and they had a pub when I was a baby and a hotel. And you know, it's all I've known since I was a kid. You know, I used to stand on a box to wash pots when I was 8 years old, and I couldn't even reach the sink to get my pocket money. You know, we're going back to the 70s and the 80s here. But the point is that
Yeah.
you know, I look back with such fondness, and I've got such pride that my parents were entrepreneurs, and I see them in a light that I didn't understand when I was younger. And I've actually spoken to my mum about this quite recently, and they begged me not to get into the industry. They said, "Do not get into hospitality in the restaurant trade. Do not open your own restaurant. We beg you, do
Wow.
anything else, just don't do it." And then look what happened. I ended up opening restaurants, and I developed restaurants all around the world. And you know, now I've got a strategic design consultancy. But the point is, I'm now an entrepreneur when they begged me not to do it because they were going through a recession at the time, and we nearly lost everything. I didn't know at the time my parents were going bankrupt, and they just
Mm,
survived, thank goodness. And they hid that because that's all parents do. You don't let your children know, you know, all the details. I think
yep.
we could talk about this later. It's an interesting conversation for modern parenting where we give a lot, and the point is, you know, don't give a lot. There's some value to doing it. So
Yep.
when you ask that question,
Yes.
I think it's interesting because I did exactly what I was told not to do, and I'm glad that I did. It came with a price, but I'm glad that
Mm,
I did. So, you know, when I look back, I don't think was there a moment where I went, yes, this is what I want to be. It was more the moment was actually being told not to do it, and then ended up
mm.
doing it was the bit that I remember. You know, rather than the other way around. But I've definitely got. I can't say I've got it through from my parents. I'm not too sure if I can connect the dots with my parents. They were entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur. Awful word. We need another word. But you know, we were independent business people. But to connect the
Yeah.
dots, I'm not too sure.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. As you were sharing the story, what came to mind was like almost as a young kid, it's like, oh, don't do it.
Yeah,
Translation, challenge. I am going to do it.
go get a
But, you
salary,
know,
get a pension.
it's so crazy you talk about this because I actually, like, if someone had asked me right now, I would probably say something similar to my son. Like, be anything, just don't be an entrepreneur. Because it's like, but I say that with a certain degree of hesitation, meaning I know I probably wouldn't be the kind of person I am, or maybe even the kind of father that I am today, if I hadn't chose the harder path. Let's say, um,
I think it's really interesting that you said that you wouldn't say that to your son because I've literally had a conversation with him last week about saying, I
yeah,
was telling him because he was asking me, you know, Daddy, you know, am I going to university? And so I had to lay the ground because university in England is very different to what you've got in the States, but it comes with a debt
yeah,
burden, and that's universal. If you go to university, it comes with a debt burden that follows you for decades. You know, and I was
yes,
explaining to him, you know, what I actually said to him was funny was, look, university is one path, and university is brilliant if you know what you want to do. But how can you know what you want to do for the rest of your life when you're 18 years old? I would rather you took 2 years out, became an apprentice, traveled the world, did your thing, do be productive and be valuable. And then when you're 20 and you want to go to do a university degree, go do it because the debt's worth every penny because you have focus and direction. I said, but that's only one path. There is another path, which is to be an entrepreneur like Daddy. And that comes with
hmm
things. So I explained about that, the pros and cons. And I said to him, I will teach you, he's 10 next week. And I said, I will teach you for the
mm,
next 18 years everything I know about running a business. So that when you're 18,
mm,
you can make a choice whether that's the direction you want to go. And if you do, I'll help you. And then I said, you've got a third choice. This is where it's quite interesting. And I said, England has no plumbers, no electricians, no roofers, no contractors. They're terrible service, overpriced, unreliable, mostly crooks. I said, would you like to make £150,000 a year? And he said, yes. And I said, do you know that's the average salary globally for a CEO? And he went, no, I didn't know that. He said, yes, I want that money. And I said, right, go be
Yeah.
a plumber because you will make more
Yes.
money than that. Because if you're smart, good service, and you know what you're doing, you'll have more demand
Yes.
than you can deal with. So I said, the other option is go learn a trade. And
Yes.
then I'll give you the business tools to do that. So that's why I'm giggling, because when you were talking about university, I genuinely, last week I had this conversation with my son.
Oh, now that we're going there, let's go deeper because I mean, I've honestly been thinking about this a lot about the future. Like what is the world gonna look like for my son when he's old enough to step out into the world and try to find his place in it. And the one thing I keep thinking about is whether or not a college degree at that point will have any value whatsoever by that time.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
love to get your thoughts on this. Like, what do you believe?
I've kind of touched on it now. Me personally, I don't believe in degrees. I think, look, if you want to be a doctor, you want to be an architect, you want to be a lawyer, of course, degrees have value and they're incredibly important. I think in this modern world, I just don't think that they've had the value that they have, and I think that they have a debt burden that means value against return. Getting an ROI on your investment, let's talk business terms on it from a kid's point of view, is can you get a return
Yeah.
on this investment? Yes, of course you can. Degrees are phenomenal. But how do you know what you want to do when you're 18 years old? And it's not like when I was 18. I mean, it was, the world was a very, very different place and you had to go out very quickly. So when I was 18, I was 18, going on 25. I've got a feeling my son and your children, maybe when they're 18 going on 15 because they don't have the life experience, exposure, and demands that we had because the world has changed. It's not bad parenting, nothing's gone wrong. It's just, I think it's just where we're going to be. So that's to come back to your question about the university and the value is, I genuinely don't believe that Max will be in a position where he can make that choice when he's 18 because I don't think he's going to have enough
Mm,
life experience because of the way that the modern world works. I mean, in the UK, I don't know about you in the US, but the schooling system here is free unless you want to go private, but it's terrible. I mean, it's a
mm,
broken system. So it's not like they're coming out
yeah.
from A levels with an incredibly good foundation of education where a degree is the obvious step up. In the UK,
Mm,
that step up, that void's getting bigger. So
yeah.
I don't know. To come back to your question, in simple terms, I don't believe that universities have the value that they used to have, and I think there's many, many other choices that could be made by our children if we give them the tools that they need to be able to make those decisions.
I have clients who work in the educational system, and it's one of the greatest quotes I ever heard from them was, Ken, they're trying to standardize something that is an art form. And the system that this
Wow,
person's basically operate, but how beautiful is that,
that is
right?
stunning.
It's
Yes.
like, and then you've got teachers just fighting this uphill battle, and it's heartbreaking.
Again, this is the I think a lot of our conversation is going to be the over the pond media fueled perception of each other, which isn't the reality. So give me the reality. Is there a pressure,
Yeah.
both hierarchical and peer and institutional, for children to go to university in America that is incredibly strong? I mean, it's like not going to university is a really big deal, whereas not going to university in England is no one would even blink an eyelid if you didn't go to university.
Yeah, I think the pressures, at least from my perspective, when I went to school, it was like a thing. Like you just after high school, you went to college. It
Yeah.
wasn't like a question. But I believe, well, I know from my personal experience, our conversation with our son is going to be different than the ones that were had when I was growing up in America,
Right. Right.
where back then it was which school are you going to? Now it's going to be like similar to what you're chatting with your kiddo now. It's like let's talk about what this trajectory actually looks like. So there
Right.
is definitely pressure. There's a difference, but I think there is a shift that is happening now with a lot of parents who are like, why? Like, is this debt worth it for the kid? for us and for their future. So yeah, we're getting deep into these
Yeah,
discussions now,
yeah.
but there is a difference,
And we're
you know.
talking, 40 to 50,000 pounds here. You're talking 100 to 200 and quarter of $1 million in the US, aren't you? It's
It's
a
no
money
joke.
making exercise, which in
Hmm.
UK wasn't like that. It is now. There's a lot more money involved, but because our government have shut the doors on international students, and that's getting harder and harder, universities are losing their money, so they're pushing the prices up. So
Mm.
it's a big question. It's a big question. I don't know about you. I try not to overthink about it because I think it gets a bit overwhelming. I kind of trust. I've trusted I'm a good parent. I trust my kid. When the time is right, we'll be having the right conversations. I know I'm going to give him the tools that he needs. But
Mm.
at the moment, it's so scary. I kind of don't want to think about it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.
It doesn't
I,
mean this conversation's over and that's the end of the whole thing. But yeah.
yeah. Well, you know what? You bring up an interesting point, and here's what I've been reflecting on a lot is this idea of like helping my son find his path, right? I feel like I'm just now at 45 starting to get on it, right? I feel like there's more clarity than there was at 40, which is a good thing,
Yeah.
at least for me. But I don't often read poetry, but I feel like as we get older, we tend to maybe rediscover it during chapters in our life when sort of nothing seems to make sense and we feel a bit lost. And I came across this incredible quote. I don't know if you're familiar with David White. He's an Irish poet. Um, it was one of those moments where you know when you hear something and you're just like, yes, that hit my soul. And I want to share this with you as the
Okay.
brief preamble before our next question. Here's the quote. How do you know that you're on your path? Because it disappears. That's how you know. How do you know that you're really doing something radical? Because you can't see where you're going. That's how you know. And everything you have lent on for your identity is gone. And so you are
Wow.
going to enter, it gets better, the black contemplative splendors of self doubt at the same time as you are setting out on this radical new path. Now, for you, good sir, looking at the path that you're on now with your company Single Thread, what did it take for you to arrive at this place where your work has become harder, but you've never enjoyed it more?
Okay, you know I use the word serendipity a lot, and I'm going to use it right now. I literally, before I jumped onto this session with you, I got off a meeting with a leader of one of the UK's largest holiday companies, and we're collaborating on a project that's irrelevant to the story. And we were talking about an experience that he had, and I asked him about when did he realize the true value of this experience he had, and he said it was the moment that he vocalized it. And we had this conversation because I remember a point in my life where um, I had to talk in a very stressful situation with really serious people because I had a job to do. And sometimes that when you verbalize, when something that you know in your head, but when you manifest it by actually getting it out into the ether, into the real world, and you hear
Yes.
yourself saying this, and it's almost like an epiphany. It's like a pivotal moment where you're just like, I just heard myself
Hmm.
tell someone that I'm the person that I never thought I could be, but I am because I'm telling someone this, and it's kind of
Yes.
it's almost like a physical manifestation of everything that's been going on before. And we were talking about this, and it kind of links to what you're saying when you're talking about my company and me enjoying it. And that I wrote recently that I literally said I'm just really really enjoying what I'm doing, but that enjoyment doesn't come from fun. It comes from intense pressure and challenge and working with incredibly intelligent, brilliant people who are pushing me to my limit. But I'm
Mm.
loving that because I work best at the limit. I don't work best at ease. I work best when I'm under duress almost. I mean, I tell you a story about the
Yeah.
restaurant I opened and what I went through to do that. So, but that's a different story for another time. But the point I'm saying is that with single thread, it feels like this internal momentum of things happening, things falling into places, the round cogs, the round blocks start fitting into
Yeah.
the square holes, everything starts to fit. And it's been challenge and pressure, and you're pushing and driving and figuring it out and challenging yourself, and you just don't know whether you're ever going to make it. And then for some reason, everything just starts to drop in. I'm not in control of it. It's almost just like the sum of the parts built enough momentum that everything slots into place because you've done the
Yes.
hard work. And then suddenly it just clicks. And then you're like, oh shit, I'm quite good at this and I'm enjoying it. And I'm delivering value and I'm building relationships and I'm having conversations with my peers who are way above my pay grades, but yet I can hold my ground because I'm not competing with them intellectually. I'm competing with them on perspective because they're paying me for how I see things, not that because I'm smarter than them, because I'm never the smartest person in the room. So one thing I learned a long time ago, don't compete intellectually. So to kind of bring you back
Yes.
to your question is, I haven't controlled it. It's just a case of the years of pushing and driving and learning and figuring it out and just challenging myself and making mistakes, lots of mistakes. Very, very recently, out of my control, everything just seemed to fit. And then suddenly the business took off. And now we're so busy
Mm.
we're turning work down and saying no a lot. But it's not because I did something today that was profoundly better than what I did a year ago. I don't know, I'm being quite philosophical here, but
That's what we're here for.
I think it's because that momentum is built and the sum of the parts is they've been able to deliver where I always wanted to be. And now I'm able to rationalize that and go, yes, okay, I'm here, let's get going. And now the work really starts. So I don't know if that really
Mm.
answers your question. You know me by now, I go on long
No, it
round
did, but in a
rants.
very philosophical way that everyone will understand.
Okay.
um, uh, well, I mean, in all seriousness, it did, because this is something that we talked about prior to you getting to this point. I think it was back in September, like early September, where you described yourself as a 52-year-old who's also an 18-year-old starting fresh.
Yes.
You were kind of both humbled by the learning curve,
Yeah.
but driven by urgency. How do you reconcile those two sides of yourself, and what does that tension reveal about the kind of legacy you want to leave for your son?
You are pulling out all the stops for these questions. Bravo, bravo.
I gave you a warning, gave you a
You
heads up.
did, you did, you did. You absolutely. I feel like I need to do rebuttals and come back at you, but I'll answer I'll try and be a bit more succinct with answering my question. Um, there's something that I know that's working in my favor, and that's maturity. I think that I'm going through stages in my life that people tend to go to in their early 20s or maybe even their 30s. I look at life as a series of chapters. One chapter closes, the next one opens. Maybe that chapter closed with tears and drama and heartache, but the next one opens with joy and potential and so on. But I'm very philosophical like that. So I've had a lot of stop starts in my life, but none of them are negative. They've all brought me to where I am because they are chapters in my life that make me who I am right now. Getting philosophical.
Mm.
But the point I'm trying to say is that starting a new company at 50, I had to move house, move location, go through a separation, become a co-parenting, single parent, basically. I had no funds, no money. I was in a new industry that I didn't know. Everything was new. I mean, it was literally, like I said, like it being an 18-year-old. The thing that got me out of that much, much faster was because it wasn't my first roller coaster. I had the maturity to not freak out and lose it. And we all do this in different ways. Some get depressed, some of us hide, some of us drink. Sometimes it goes really, really bad. I was in a position where I could have lost my marbles, and some people would have. But because I had enough life experience, and because I'd seen this before, and because I understood what was going on, I embraced it and I didn't let it freak me out. So
Mm.
it was kind of that combination of this was meant to happen when it was happening. Because if I didn't have this maturity and I was doing this at 32, I probably would have failed
Mm-hmm.
by now and would be in quite a dark place because I didn't have enough life experience to see it through. So I know your question was very much towards a business sense, and I'm trying to get to that point, but I think, to be honest with you, it's very much about me in the now and who I am, and how could I process this? How could I juggle all these balls, drop a
Yeah.
few, but catch most of them and put them where they need to be? And none of this is quick. I mean, I think this is the one thing about all entrepreneurs know is that there's no fast track to this. You hear stories of, oh, great success, and you know, you know, Instagram life makes things look like it's achievable in one day, and of course it's not, because no one ever talks about all the crap that
Yeah.
went wrong. And am I allowed to swear in
There's
this
no
or not?
hack.
Because I swear a lot. Am I allowed to swear, or do I keep it clean?
Oh, fuck yeah. You could say what you
Oh,
want.
good, good,
It's all
good.
good.
Like, no one celebrates the shit sandwiches, do they? So
Yeah. No.
everyone wants the glossy end result. They don't want to celebrate the knee deep shit that they're wading through, and the depression, the anxiety, the bankruptcy, all the stuff that comes with success. And
Yes.
I thank goodness that great content creators, like Steve Bartlett is a very basic example, is that they celebrate the hardship. It's not just about the wins, and I think that's life. And I think with smaller entrepreneurs like us that have value, and we've got good stuff that we're building, it's very easy to talk about perfection all the time. And I think that life isn't like that. And I'm very anti-perfection. I'd rather that we were all warts and all, because I think it just
Hmm.
helps people better understand the real journey ahead of us. But I'm migrating from your question. I don't know if you got the answer to that with single threaded maturity, life experience, and
Yeah.
I've done it before. That's what's helped me.
Yeah. Well, there was something that it brought to mind for me was, I mean, we've talked a lot, honestly, about this. Like, and you said specifically you'd rather be messy, vulnerable, and imperfect than polished and
Yeah.
inauthentic. So my next question for you is, how actually has embracing imperfection really shaped the way that you lead, parent, or even show up in life now?
Oh gosh, wow. Um, well, the one thing, I think I'm quite a good dad, right? So I've got no one else. No one could tell me whether I am or not, but I genuinely think I'm quite a good dad, and I'm absolutely positive that you are. You've got the right energy for this. And one of the things that
Oh,
I
thank you.
I deliberately do with my son, especially now he's coming up to 10, and cognitively he's really aware and he's absorbing things in an intellectual way, and he's going to be a preteen soon, is that
Mm.
I don't try and present me, my life, and everything as a polish. I temper what I tell him. I don't want to give him too much. He still needs to be a child. I don't. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't fundamentally believe in making your child your best friend and telling them everything. My sister did that.
Mm.
She's an incredible. I've looked up to her all my life as a parent, and she's guided me. She's incredible, but she'll even say herself that the biggest mistake she ever made was she made her children her best friends. And I think there has to be a distance. There's still a
Oh,
job to do. I think as a parent,
yep.
you're a governor, you're a leader, you're a CEO, and
Yeah.
you're there for the good times, the bad, but there still needs to be the bond. So what I've been trying to do with Max quite deliberately is that I didn't want to present myself as being perfect. I've got friends who do this actually, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. I'd rather he sees me fractional. I cry all the time. I'm a very emotional person. He sees me cry regularly. You know, he'll
Good.
he'll
That's
um,
good.
he'll see all my imperfections. He sees me vulnerable. He sees me angry. But if I do it, I'll always give him context. So I think
Mm.
you're asking a really powerful question there, because I think that trying to be perfect as a parent maybe is a direction you can never win on, because you're
Yep.
masking reality. You're creating a false perception. You're doing insta porn for your kids. Everything is polished and perfect
Yeah.
because you want to see them as you want them to see you as a hero. But is that really the right thing to do? And for me, the answer is no. I'd rather celebrate being imperfect, because Max is imperfect. All our children are imperfect. We're imperfect. So why put them on a pedestal where they're going to fail? Because they will never be able to achieve perfection, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yes.
does that make sense and answer that question?
100%. I mean,
Okay.
as you're sharing this, it's interesting because, my wife and I, we have these moments with our son, you know what it's like. It's almost like You have to have an infinite amount of patience, but that doesn't exist. For example, when it takes your son 15 minutes to put his shoes on, it requires a certain amount. You can't not go inward and
Yeah.
realize, wow, I'm yelling at my son for the same shit I used to do as a parent. But it is interesting how I find really, and this is just me reflecting on my own journey, but I'm curious to know how you feel about this. If you're going to choose the path of entrepreneurship, that means by default you have to be the leader of your own life, let alone your business.
Mm.
And how sometimes nurturing patience and understanding, and also the art of silence and being quiet and to reflect and
Oh,
sit back,
yes.
these attributes of good parenting are also, they can be applied to good leadership as well. But what are your thoughts on that as someone who really is, you're not just leading a company, you're leading by example, you're leading as a parent.
Yes.
What are some of the most valuable things that have helped you stay on your path with these moments with your son or within your business?
Well, okay, I've got to step back a little bit here because you said some things. You said some really profoundly beautiful things there, by the way,
Yeah.
and I think it's a sign of great parenting. I think only you can say that. Um, but
Thank you.
the art of silence, I think, is profound. I think this is something that we need to learn, especially in this current generation where we are bombarded with content. Silence doesn't exist, does it? We're constantly given
Hmm.
information. It never, never, never stops. The silence can be profound. I have absolutely proactively made the decision for several years now to give my son space and silence, to not be the
Mm.
eternal parent, not be there micromanaging decision, but just to leave him. I'll leave him for 2 hours sometimes. I'll just say, when you need me, give me a shout. I'm upstairs doing my work in my office. Come and get me, because I, my gut feeling is he needs space. He needs, I mean, it's never silence because kids are all on devices, but space leads to thought, it leads to independence, it leads to something, and silence in particular is incredibly a profound thing as well. So I completely agree with that,
Mm.
actually. And there was another thing you said. I just thought of a moment I had. It was last Friday with my son, and he was doing the usual. I mean, every parent will know who's listening to this that your kid has a meltdown on Friday because they're exhausted after a long week and they're mentally and physically drained. And of course, who likes Fridays? It's the last day of school. And so he was
Yeah.
just particularly being stubborn, that sense of a preteen coming out. So I just sat down on
Hmm.
the sofa and I chucked a tantrum with him. I went, and I said, "Look, we have permission to swear. It's a sign of adulthood." So I said, "You can swear, but you must always ask for permission because you haven't deserved the right to swear yet. You're not old enough, but you can ask for the
Oh,
permission." So
that's
but
brilliant.
because I swear a lot, I said, "Can I swear?" And he went, "Yeah." And I went, fucking hate Fridays. And we both chucked a tantrum. Of course, he just squashed it. He got up, got dressed, and we went to school. It was brilliant. But the fact was that instead of fighting him to get into school on time, I related to him and I acknowledged that what he was going through was real, and I feel the same. And even as a grown up, I hate Friday mornings, and who wants to do it? And come on the
Yeah.
weekend. And it was brilliant. So I can't relate that to how I do that with my clients. Chucking tantrums with my clients.
Look, we got a recording. Someday you can reference this clip and be like, I got an idea. I'm going to fix this client
I'll
situation.
show him this one day. I'll show him this. So sorry, I had to bring that up because I thought of that when you were saying it.
No, I
Um,
appreciate that.
Remind me of that question again, specific about work, please. Sorry.
So yeah, I think you kind of almost answered it. It's like, how is this, with that, the lessons of silence and parenting and leadership, how has it all helped you to sort of stay on your path, right? Because I think what I've learned, look, I'll just give this last year as a reference, right? I've talked to leaders and entrepreneurs who have had to get second mortgages on their house to cover payroll. People who've sold things they didn't need to sell or were forced to keep the engine going. I guess the deeper question I was asking is, what are the things or lessons, or maybe it's an idea that helps to keep you grounded and on your path during those moments when really you can't see what's coming next and you can't predict, right? And there is no clear answer.
I think this is really interesting because it does come back to what I was talking about before about maturity, that I don't lose my
Yeah.
shit because I have the
Yeah.
right to lose my shit. I've had time where
Hmm.
I've I'll be honest about this. I've had times where to pay the rent and feed my son, I haven't eaten for 3 days because I've been through. So this is in the last few years, where it's been really,
Mm.
really tough and cash flow sucks. And
Yeah.
luckily I have a small agile business quite deliberately. My partner and I made a decision when we joined each other that, I used to I used to own a very big business. I had 113 staff, I think. And I said, I never want to do this again. I want to keep it adaptive and reactive, and I don't want to be caught up in payroll and management. I don't want that to be 70% of my time. Shall we make a
Yeah.
decision to keep this really small and agile and very immersive? And we've made that decision, and it's paid dividends. So luckily, I don't have that burden of a really fancy office and a fleet of Teslas and fancy coffee machines and payroll to pay. And I'm very glad that I don't have it, because I know a lot of agencies are really struggling with that at the moment. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that I haven't got in positions where my business struggles are not impacting my daily life and even my son. And
Yes.
obviously I've created a very clear buffer. He's not aware of that. But
Mm.
I've really, really heard from it. But the only reason I didn't go down a rabbit hole, or I didn't, get very depressed, and I think men tend to go a different way to women when they react to stress and how we handle things, and we tend to go very
Hmm.
internally, and I don't have a big network of people I can lean on, so I had to process this myself. Because this
Mm.
wasn't the first time I'd been through it. Yes, it was very rocky, it wasn't easy, but I was able to think my way out of it and keep myself stable, and it
Yeah.
worked. I mean, it took a while, but it worked. So, to answer your question, my privilege, and this isn't for everyone because we're all in different age groups, but
Yeah.
because of my experience and my age and what I've done, it's stopped me from maybe going down a path that I could never come back from. And
Mm.
I don't mean that in a literal sense, but I just mean from a business point of view. I'm
Totally.
very grateful that I've had the experiences that I've had, to be able to kind of really answer that question, I suppose.
Yeah. Perfectly timed, because what you shared with me, and it's interesting. I love asking this question because if I asked you this next question 5 years from now, your answers may be completely different based on your life experience and the chapter of life that you're in. So, the question I've been dying to ask you, Marcus, if you could create an alternative educational experience and teach the top three most important life lessons that we don't learn in school, what would they be?
Oh gosh, I love this. I love this. One I know about because I've been writing about this recently. One is I think all schools should offer a 1 year apprenticeship before you can even think about a degree. You need to learn. You need to know what is it like to get up in the morning, get dressed, brush your teeth, go to work, have a boss, deliver something, achieve, grow. Personally, if I could change the whole world's law, I would make everyone do a 1 year apprenticeship
Mm.
in whatever capacity that is, because you need that life lesson. You need to know what it's like to be accountable, responsible, have a boss, to know that, sometimes work sucks. Sometimes it's boring.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's awful. Sometimes there's pressure. Sometimes there's bullies who don't treat you very well at work. Life is, work is just like school. You get the same morons and
Yeah.
narcissistic idiots that ruin your life and work and that you do at school. So, but you have to take those knocks to get the resilience to be able to get your life going in the right direction. So, number one would
Mm.
definitely be that. I think apprenticeship and an experience. I think another
Mm.
thing that I'm really passionate about is learn a skill. I think in schools, you need one life lesson skill. It could be anything. It could be knitting. It could be cooking. It could be, plumbing. It could be, I don't care what it is. It could be coding. It could be, how to draw. It doesn't matter. But I think you need a skill that can see you through your whole life. So you've got a default backup.
Mm.
I think that could save so many people. Imagine if you are, a 25-year-old entrepreneur and you're going for it, but you're going through the lessons that you and I've been through, and you've made it, you've lost it, you're fighting for
Yeah.
survival, but you always know in that toolkit and that arsenal in your back pocket is, I know how to go and be a mechanic because I learned that
Yes.
at school. And the worst case scenario is I'll go get a job as a mechanic. So I know I'm okay. So it's like that
Yes.
worst case scenario is never that bad because you've
Mm.
learned a life skill. So that's something I would love to see as well. I don't know if I can give you
So
the terms, but
valuable.
those two are have been on my brain in the last month, I have to say.
Honestly, I think, thank you for sharing this, because it's like, what am I going to teach my son? One, buy real estate, learn a trade, and become financially literate. Like, know finances. That's a that's a really popular one that a lot of folks mention. Is it's the one blind spot we don't have going through traditional, education, is
It's
the laws
funny.
of money.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that one. Like if I know, I'm fairly savvy with finances now. I'm quite confident. If I knew what I knew back when I was 20, would that have made a difference? Not really, because I'm 20.
Really?
It's like, you
That's true.
know,
20s
I,
are fuck no matter how you
I'm
cut it. It's just a
partying and
mess.
I'm with girls and I'm making really bad decisions in my life. And, I'm somehow coming home at
That's a
4 in the
good point.
morning, but going to work the next day and then don't have, you know, it's kind of I don't think you could put a mature head on
Yeah,
on
it's so true.
on. Do you know what I mean? So there's loads of things. Learn a second language. I mean, come on, really critical. Be financially literate. I
Yeah.
think these are really really important. But do they fundamentally change the trajectory of your children's future? No. What does do
Mm,
is to have tools that you can come back to. So when the shit hits the fan, which it does for all of us, you've got a
hmm
default backup setting. And investing in property is great, but that's a very American thing. In England, we don't say that because investing in a property is we've got most 25, 30-year-olds can't even get on the ladder here because the amount of money
Oh,
they need to save to do
yeah.
it, there's no way of getting on the ladder because taxes and government, and we won't get into politics, but it's a mess. So
Yeah.
for example, in the UK, getting on the property ladder was something that happened when I was a kid. Get on the property ladder. Now, that's a miracle. If you can get on the property ladder by the time you're 30, you're doing really well.
I heard this great thing from a recent guest, which is, I'm excited for what the future looks like. I know times are very dark right now, but I have every belief and hope in my heart and soul that my son, my daughter, my kid will be that person that gets to choose how they want to show up in the world, and like how they want to make an impact and maybe change
Yeah,
it for the better.
yeah. I
Um,
love that. I've thought of one more actually, and
yeah.
that was beautifully said, by the way. There is one more. Go travel. I traveled
Mm.
when I was 18. Literally, my parents said, the moment you're 18, we are literally kicking you out of the house. It wasn't because they don't love me. It said, you need to go and see the
Go
world. And I
travel.
did. Literally, on my 18th birthday, I sold my decks, made a bit of money, bought a flight to Greece, and didn't come back for a year. The point that I'm getting, especially for my son, is that the world is such a small place now in terms of ability to go and see. It's very easy to navigate the world, but it feels like the world's getting smaller because of technology and the way that we're being fed information. And what you see on the media
Mm.
is not the real world. Now, I'm very privileged. I am very, very well traveled. I've been all over the world. I spent 10 years all across Africa, Mexico. I lived in Switzerland. I've been all over. So
Mm.
um, that's another thing that I'm definitely going to instill into my son. But you could instill into everything is go travel for 6 months. When I was growing up, when I was 18, the thing was to get a travel pass around Europe, and almost every
Yeah.
kid would take 6 months out. There was a name for it, I can't remember what
Mm.
it's called, but you take a deferral in university, get this 150 quid travel pass, and you could go anywhere in Europe because back then your passport would get you around. And
Wow.
I think that changes your life forever because if when you're young you can understand cultures and diversity, you can understand religion, needs, wants, art, philosophy, and you get a sense of there's a bigger world out there. Your world isn't you, because when you're 18, everyone's looking in because we're all mini narcissists at 18
hmm
years old, aren't we? So, but
Yeah.
that's it's meant to be like that. But the moment you realize it's out there, you know, um, I think it changes your life forever, and I think that would be the third one. So sorry to digress there, but you asked for three. I've given you three. There you go.
That was my plan the whole time. That's what this ramble was about, Marcus, to get you back to answer.
It's a ramble with you and me, but yeah.
Oh man, thank you, man. I love this. Um, well, we're gonna close it out here with a couple of finisher questions. I asked myself this question during a chapter of my life that was particularly challenging and dark, and for me at least, I've found that doing these internal check-ins where you remind yourself about what matters most. Like really outside of the external noise, what is it that matters? And I found a great way to get to the heart of that is to ask about regret in this moment. So, God
Okay.
forbid if there was an unfortunate accident, Marcus was on his deathbed, and you were aware that this was the end.
Yes.
In that moment, what would be your biggest regret?
Zero. I don't believe in regrets. I never have done. Fundamentally, I think I've lived my life to the best of its ability. I've pushed the envelope. I've taken adventures. I've taken risks. I've monumentally messed up again and again and again. I've done some good things in my life. I've got an incredible kid. I genuinely, we talked about chapters a bit earlier. Because I've got chapters, I think regret builds up over time. And because I've got chapters,
Mm,
when that chapter closes, it's a new chapter, it's a fresh start. There's nothing to look back and regret. So yes, there's a couple of opportunities that I had that I should have taken, but they're irrelevant. That's momentary lifestyle stuff.
mm,
Big, deep philosophical stuff about my life, my trajectory, my son, my family, the people I love the most, and the potential of my next 10 to 15 good years left of working before I need to retire. Do I have a
mm.
regret? Absolutely zero, not one.
Love it. That's so beautiful what you just said. I love because it's true, right? If you close the chapter, it's done and you're moving on to your next
Mm.
move, right? What is that phrase? If you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you're at peace, you're living in the present. And I think
Oh,
that's such a,
wow.
yeah,
Wow.
I can't take credit for that. I think that's a Buddhist saying, but like I've clung on to that idea a lot to remind me to keep it
That's
grounded.
incredible. You can tell the person who reads a lot here and the person who doesn't. So you're quoting Nietzsche and it's beautiful, and I'm just making it up as I go along. But I think we're both on the same page as always.
I appreciate the credit, but in full transparency, I think it was like an Instagram quote. I haven't cracked a book in a year. I'm audiobook all the way, man.
Uh,
But that's a whole other discussion. Um, well, on a brighter note, from just parlaying off the last question, if today was the end, what would be your most peaceful thought or realization you've lived a good life?
that's not an answer that comes straight away. I mean, I think as a parent, don't we? We all default into our family. So, I'm so
Hmm.
proud of my son and where his future's going and the potential that would be one of it. But I think that's a really, I think that's a really, I genuine struggle to answer that in a really clear and concise way. I'm proud of the life that I've lived. I told you I have no regrets. I wouldn't change it. Someone said, "Can you go back and change it?" I wouldn't. I'm sad that I've got so many stories to tell, but I can't get the stories out. I think this is the thing about
Hmm.
all us human beings that we've
Hmm.
got. I think that the art of the conversation is dying. That's why your podcast is so wonderful, and you're doing such a great job because you're asking
Hmm.
the right questions and you're really connecting on a human level. But I feel that as time has gone by, that we're connecting less and less in a really beautiful, fundamental way. So as that lack of connection manifests because of technology, I think we're all losing the ability to tell our story. And what I've noticed, what's frustrated me a lot, in particular since I've been back in the UK for the last 6 years, is that I'm angry that people want to know my value of who I am now. They don't want to know my story. So it's like, what do you do? What's your job? What's your status? What
Yeah.
what do you mean to me? Do I want to be talking to you? Do you have any value in me? And when I was in Africa for 10 years, no one ever asked me what my job was. They asked me, tell me about your family. Where are you from? Who are you? They wanted to know, they wanted to know the real me before they found out what I did. And that was a cultural thing
Hmm.
across Africa. And it's beautiful, really, really beautiful. And I miss that terribly. So I
Yeah.
can't ask you a question for there, but what I can do is tell you the opposite of that, which is the frustrations, which is that we've all got stories to tell, and we're trying to do it through these podcasts. But
Mm.
that's the frustration. Maybe I need to write a book one day. We'll see.
I
It'd
think that's what's next for you, my friend.
have to be R-rated, but yeah, we'll give it a go.
Those make the best books. I know some people, trust me.
Oh dear.
um, honestly, thank you for sharing that because as you shared that with me, I was like, God, how refreshing would that be to walk into a room and not have to talk about what you do, what your title is, instead of someone just asking you who you are, where's your family from? Like,
Yes.
final question, good sir.
Okay.
According to Marcus, what does it mean to own your truth?
Bloody hell. I feel like I've done a PhD after this one.
Uh, let me
That's
just mark
big,
this
man.
clip right
What does it
there.
feel so good? We need another hour just to manifest that conversation. My God.
I know that
What
I
does it
saved it
feel
right
to,
to the end, right?
what does it feel to own your truth? Oh, look, do you know what? There's this thing, there's this obsession about balance for years and years, and we're all trying to find this balance. I don't believe that balance exists. I think it's a
Mm,
conundrum of up and downs. And if you look at things holistically over a long point of view, you'll find balance. But on a day to day, month by month, you don't. But you know, to find your truth is just getting a. I think it's that sense of I've had a very difficult ride over the last 3 years. It's been it's pushed me to the brink. It's been very, very hard. But I'm happy and grateful for where I am, and I see the potential of where I'm going, and I love that. I've got an incredible
mm,
son. I have a beautiful family that have been through hardship, and we're trying to get out of that. But we are so close to beautiful. I've had great friends in my life. I've got a business that I believe in. So, you know, a lot of it for me is, you know, truth is really about a sense of well-being and equilibrium. And I do look, you know, I'm not rich, I don't have fancy cars, I don't have money to spend, but that doesn't matter for me. I don't care about money. Money is the end product of a successful journey. So I'm never motivated by money. So when you talk about
mm,
finding your truth, I think the truth for me is about that balance of love, life, friendships, family, happiness, focus,
mm.
ambition, direction, and drive. And probably more so than the rest of my life, I feel a sense of equilibrium with all of that, maybe because I'm my age, but that feels like my truth. I feel more confident than I've ever done in my life because I feel more balanced and about what's happening. So yeah, it's quite hard to answer the question in a beautiful way, but I don't know if that kind of gets to the point in an abstract
It
version.
does. I mean, it's beautiful, man. Honestly, I mean that because I think what you just said is, I think it's this idea, right? And this is why the question is hard for someone to answer, because if you're at peace with being in progress, that means you're present being in your life, right?
Wow.
Like
Yes.
you're
Yes.
growing, you're learning, and I think if you
Yes.
struggle to answer that question, it's probably a good sign because you're in the midst of a journey,
Well, you
you know.
articulated
Uh,
that beautifully. I could have saved you 3 minutes and just quoted you. That's that absolutely smashed that. Yeah, that is a stunning way to put it. 100%, I agree. Yes.